Teresa did a great job last week on the law of the inner circle. I love that chapter just because it really edifies the law of association, something that we've all lived by, something we've discussed for probably 30 years. You'll become the average of the 5 people you associate with. I like the way Teresa kind of mixed it up with a little bit of YouTube last week. She said you guys had a great call. So Teresa, I appreciate you subbing in. I was in Breckenridge for our family ski vacation. So we had a great time out there and enjoyed the mountains, the snow, and everything that goes with that great town of Breckenridge. So I do know that there was a question put out to all you guys. And again, let's just kind of raise your hand. I'll call on you. But the question was, how have you selected people for your inner circle? How have you selected people for your inner circle? Something you've had a chance to think about here. And let's just kind of kick it off with that before we jump into the law of empowerment. Jane, go ahead.
Well, I think a lot of times my inner circle came about from getting to know people, building relationships, and those that aren't like oil and water and just kind of never mesh. The relationship builds up and you end up becoming workout partners, for example, Brenda and I, and friends like Robert Bagley and other people on the team, are that we can reach out to and ask for help if we need it. I love some of the relationships I've built, for example, on LinkedIn, people I can reach out to and I actually trust to them to give me honest answers when I need them and be frank with me about what, things that might be going on, for example, in my business or whatever. So I think it has a lot for me to do, first of all, with building relationships, no matter what the person's status is,
Yeah, good. Now, how do you know you can trust them? How do you get to the point of kind of gauging their character or maybe their experiences? Is that just through time and building relationships? And what else would you say to that?
Ooh, I think a lot of things come up pretty quickly, John, without people realizing it. Someone reached out to me and started asking questions, for example, about someone else. No, we don't want to do that. We're not going to do that. Trying to put someone else down. No, don't do that, because are you doing that to me when I'm not talking to you? You can find out really quickly when you talk to people and get to know them, you really do find out their integrity or lack thereof. Oh, look, I can get in the back door. I don't have a ticket. I can get you in. No,
Yeah.
maybe somebody I need to watch out for, right? Don't get me wrong. I never used to get tickets for concerts. I knew where the back door was, but I didn't take 10 people with me.
Yeah. Hey.
So,
Well, that's why one of the things I like in Maxwell's book on the chapter we're going to talk about here in a minute, the law of empowerment is, if you're the type of leader or somebody who's kind of pushing people down, as you're pushing them down, you're bending over and kind of going down with them, so, there's, time will promote you or expose you. We've all seen that, and people can look good for a moment, but over time, that exposure becomes pretty relevant. So, Jane, thank you for that. Michael, go ahead.
Yeah. So, thinking about that, in selecting people for your inner circle, there's a couple of different ways to do it. You have your present live people that you talk to occasionally, or you have your team call and you're growing together. But then there's also the personal development leaders that you listen to, which is your circle of influence, so to speak. So selecting them is really listening to the content, understanding how it's empowering you, and how you can pass that on to others. And I think that's strong. Listening to, especially right now with Mr. Maxwell, of course, Jim Rohn. So I reached out to Teresa Johnson earlier about some stuff. And, it's taking advantage of the connections that you have and really putting it to use.
Good. Yep. Good. Take advantage of those connections. And I tell you what, ask questions. And find those who are willing to kind of engage from that value perspective. So you're going to find some will, some won't. Those who don't aren't the type of leaders you want to be around anyway. So thanks, Michael. Juwan, go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Hoffman. Can you hear me clearly?
We can, Juwan. How are you?
Oh man, like I said, another beautiful day. Really excited. Just helped a new partner, Performance Club, qualify, and got 2 more people on deck here after this call ends with a couple of 3-ways and presentations. So I'm looking forward to getting about 2, 3 more over the finish line before 12 a.m.
Good.
Yes.
Good.
Yes. So there's a book by Gino Wickman called Traction. And I've stolen a lot from that book over the last handful of years. And there's an acronym that I kind of changed a little bit for my own purposes. And I kind of refer to it as GAS, right? And I think I talked about this at the last call, but for me, when I'm looking at my inner circle, I ask myself, 3 questions. Number 1, do they get it, right? Are we on the same page in terms of the mission, right? And anyone who knows me, I believe that entrepreneurship is empowerment. I believe that is the most effective way to help people change their lives and get on the right side of the fence. The bottom line is it's tough to make smart decisions in terms of your family, and your stomach is touching your back and you don't know if a job is going to be there a week from now or 2, 3 years from now. So, if you're not excited about entrepreneurship, if you're not excited about helping people level up, if you're not excited about seeing people win, if you don't get that mission, I don't diss you, but I distance myself from you, right? The other thing is, the A stands for accountability. Are you willing to be accountable? Or are you just talking, right? So there's a lot of people who chirp and talk and run their mouths, but when it comes to the execution, they're not coming early, they're not showing up late. They're not, for the purposes of our conversation, they're not striving until the end of the month to get to PCQ. They're not doing the things that are required to meet their goals and objectives. And once again, I don't diss people, but I will distance myself because people will respect what you do, but that does not necessarily mean they want to be accountable. They don't want to pay the price.
That's right.
Right. So I pay very close attention to whether or not people are willing to be accountable. You hang around 6 cursing cousins, you become the 7. You hang around 6 people who aren't performing, guess what? You're not going to perform. So they say iron sharpens iron. That's a lie. Sharp iron sharpens iron. You hang around a bunch of dull knives, they'll dull you too. So I make every effort to be around people who are sharp knives, who are getting the work done and not just running their mouths and, doing that other stuff. And then last but not least, not everyone is going to have the skills to pay the bills, so to speak, but are you willing to learn? Are you a constant learner? Are you willing to commit to becoming the person you need to become, learn the skills you need to learn? I don't have to like you to work with you. If you have the skills, hey, I'm the open ears, right? The new broom may sweep better, but the old broom knows the corners. I want to know those corners. So do you have that hunger for the skills and to become what you need to become to achieve your goals and objective? And if you don't have those 3 things in place, we can get along, but we ain't going to get along, right? I'm not going to be so responsive to phone calls, emails, or texts. You have a hard time getting in contact with me if you don't have gas, right? Or as my mother would say, she's from Mississippi, she would say, if you're not cooking with gas, right? Southerners know what I mean when I say that, right? So do you get the mission? Are you willing to be accountable to it? Are you just running your mouth? And if you don't have the skills, are you hungry for the skills? So that's kind of like the formula I use when I'm evaluating who I allow to be within my circle, and also, quite frankly, the circles I participate in.
Good. All right. Good stuff. Thank you, Juwan. And so Megan, we're going to go to you real quick and then jump into the topic tonight. But how have you selected people for your inner circle?
So the type of people I have picked for my inner circle are those who are honest, those who show up. One thing I've learned is it's not about the trips and it's not about the money. It's all about family and teamwork, because that goes a long way. Their story, someone that could fill in that you could trust when you're not there. This is some lessons learned that I've learned recently, and people that I can rely on, and I know they're going to be honest and trustworthy, and someone I can learn from. There's things people know that have better skills and better things and ways of doing things that you can look up to, and we all work together as a team. And that to me is really important, is somebody that's going to be there when I need help, and not just me, them also. It's like, hey, Megan, I need help with this. Sure, I will do anything to help anyone, to make it all work as a team, because we're a family. That's the type of person I look for.
Good, good. I think the most important thing you can do is surround people with you who are better than you. You know, and that way you're looking at different skill sets from different individuals who raise the bar and help you to take things to a higher level. And we'll kind of get into that. You saw that in the Henry Ford story. You saw it in the Abraham Lincoln story, and you can see it in the, the story of so many others, So if you look, and we wrap up on page 136, a leader's potential is determined by those closest to him or her. So a leader's potential, I think Juwan mentioned it earlier. If you see yourself on a 1 to 10 being a 7, and you surround yourself with 6, 5s, and 4s, you're going to be an average of all of that. If you see yourself as a 6 and you surround yourself with 7, 8s, and 9s, you can't help but become a 7, 8, or 9. All right. So, the other part to this is something that we're working diligently on here with every one of you. Not just with this call, but for you to pass it down to the organizations you're building, and that's on page 137. Hire the best staff you can find. Well, we don't hire staff here. That's the beauty of our business model. When you help others get what they want in life, you'll ultimately get what you want. Behind me are files. Upstairs in my wife's office are files. 35 years of huge success in this industry, building in 7 countries with another company, launching the People's Network, being one of the top 4 money earners in Legal Shield. We'll open up everything to anybody who wants it. We will give it to you. We will mentor you. We will coach you. We will run with you, because if we can help others get what they want, you'll ultimately get what you want. That's the beauty of this model. But on page 137, hire the best staff you can find, develop them as much as you can, and hand off everything. Hand off everything. See, that's why I want to see more of you on this phone engaged in conversation. All right. I hear Michael each week. I hear Jane each week. It's great to see Juwan. I hear Brenda each week. I can't move my mouse. So I can't go down the line and say, hey, I haven't heard from you, or you, but this is an engagement of each other. We are growing in the 21 laws of leadership so that you can pay this forward to those that you're going to coach and mentor. Okay. Anyhow, we want to hear from everybody. Let's go forward. The law of empowerment. Let me just jump through this for a second. Only secure leaders give power to others. These are just some one-word answers. These aren't for dialogue right now because we don't have a lot of time. Can you think of leaders in maybe the past 100 years or 200 years, I don't care, you pick it, who did not live by that law? Only secure leaders give power to others. Can you think of leaders who have only been interested in creating followers? Does anything come to mind for anybody? No? You want me to start it off?
Hitler.
There you go. That's one of the first ones that come to mind. Absolutely. And what
Stalin.
Mussolini.
Stalin's another one. Hitler's a good example. Stalin. Yeah. What about President Xi in China? Same thing. You think of communism. Same thing. You could think of different dictators. You think of Castro. You think of Chiang Kai-shek. You think of Che Guevara. I mean, we can pick hundreds. You know what I mean? Can you think of leaders who had no other interest but in growing other leaders? Can you think of leaders like that?
Harlan Stonecipher.
Tony Robinson.
Tony
Robbins.
Robbins? Who?
Nelson
Kim
Mandela.
Jong-un.
Okay, all right.
Martin Luther
So-
King.
John
Yep,
Hoffman.
yep. All right, I like it.
John Maxwell.
Bingo, bingo. And that's one of the things that we like is John wrapped up his chapter with where was it? Dan. What was Dan's last name? Did he have a last name for Dan? His executive pastor and what he did for Dan, what he's done for so many others. I mean, think of Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn was diligent, started at Herbalife, grew an organization, and then went on to become the head speaker for Herbalife and one of the, mentors to all personal development speakers. So good stuff.
Zig Ziglar.
Who?
Zig Ziglar.
Big Ziglar, yeah.
Yeah, Zig Ziglar.
Stephen
We can-
Miles Monroe.
huh?
Stephen Covey.
Miles
Covey.
Monroe.
Good.
I tell you one question that it raises. On a quick note, it helps you to look in the mirror and say, are you secure in your leadership?
Yeah. Yeah. And we're going to get into that, Michael, here in just a minute, but you're 100% right. And I'll share a couple of thoughts I personally have for my life. And we'll get to that in a second here, but let's go to page 142, and it's a little bit of a less known chapter or story out there in the world of success, but Henry Ford, as the book says, he was the antithesis of a good leader. And you wouldn't really think that when he had 50% market share, but we all understand that things duplicate, right? And Henry Ford, well, Edsel comes on. Edsel dies at 42, but then Henry Ford II, Edsel's son, comes into play. And, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And Henry Ford II basically almost buried the company as well, because it wasn't about growing leaders. And so to Michael's point, if you're not secure with your own self-worth, then what are the chances of you being secure and helping to grow other leaders? You're not. Let me just see here, 142. Ford had 50%, went to 28% because they would not change. That's something else that we have to spend a minute on, is understanding how to embrace change. And I have to tell you that over the years, I've watched a lot of people from Prepaid Legal to Legal Shield, not necessarily embrace change. Doesn't mean we always have to agree with everything, but change is inevitable. The one thing you can rest on is that change is going to happen, in every facet of life. And what I encourage people to do is not to be like Ford, where you got 50% market share and you're unwilling to change. You're only going to have one car. You're not going to look at the competition. You're not going to look at the different things you can do to grow your company. And all of a sudden you're at 28%. Well, boom, that sometimes can be too late, because the competition will overtake you and they will stomp on you like a bull in a china shop. Look at the Fortune 500 companies. You guys have heard me talk about this in the past. The Fortune 500 companies 25 years ago, many of those companies aren't on that list today. And that's because they weren't willing to change. Kodak, not willing to change. BlackBerry, not willing to change. Blockbuster, not willing to change. It's critical. It is imperative upon us that we embrace the change that comes our way. I've seen a lot of people say, well, Harlan Stonecipher said we will never raise the price on a customer. Well, Harlan's not here anymore. And I don't think when you take a look at any business today and the things they've had to do when you're adding benefits, that you don't look at improving and increasing your premium that's out there. And we've seen other things. Well, we've got 3 plans that we can go, the basic, the preferred, and the premium, and oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? Well, hey, if you look at any business out there that's successful, they're going to give you 3 options. You're probably not going to go with the lowest. You're probably not going to go with the highest, but that preferred plan is probably where people are going to land, and they'll go to the premium plan when you take a look at trust and some of the other things. It gives us a bigger and better opportunity to market to a bigger and stronger group, because now we can kind of fill in and meet the needs of those that we're talking to. Let's see. So what else did we have here? Embrace that change, page 143. Law of association repeated. So again, Henry Ford II hired, as you guys can remember, a pretty tremendously strong staff, and then got intimidated and started to pit people against each other. And boom, the company starts to tank again. He sabotaged his own company because of two things: pride and ego. And you know what scripture said? Pride cometh before the fall. So, ego is edging God out. Those are two things that are awfully dangerous. But page 145 also goes on to talk about Teddy Roosevelt. And this is what I like that they said in that: to lead others well, we must help them to reach their full potential. That's what we do at Shield Nation. That's what we do with calls like this. To lead others well, we must help them to reach their full potential. That's why we put together, Darcy primarily, tell me, show me, let me, grow me. I can't tell you how disappointed I am in watching people take the responsibility they have with one of the greatest opportunities I've ever seen, sponsor people in the business, and then kind of hope that they're still here 30, 60, 90 days later. That's like giving a baby steak the day they're born. Babies don't eat steak the day they're born. It's milk, and it's milk only for I don't know how long, okay, but quite a while. It's the same thing here. We've got to nurture, we've got to cultivate, we've got to protect, we've got to provide for those individuals. Tell me how to download the mobile app. Tell me how to Performance Club qualify. Show me. Let me do it. But be right there to grow me as you let me do it. Michael, you want to add into that?
I do, and it's just a side point, kind of connected to what you're saying. It's easy. Very strong point that hit me was the point of playing King of the Hill, and so growing up in my early days, 60s and 70s, early 70s, yeah, that game was really a strong game. It was embedded in us, and until I really listened to what it was brought out on this in this information, it just makes sense. You play King of the Hill, and what you do is it downs others. That was your whole thing, to keep people down. That's something that we have to get rid of. It takes moments like this. Our team, I watch some of these big calls where you have 300 and 400 and 500 people on, and I'm telling you, to me, this is the call. Where we're able to actually listen to other comments that help us to grow as a team, and get away from that mindset that may have really crushed us in our younger days. I hope I made sense. I hope I made sense there.
Well, you do. You absolutely make sense. And that's why I like the intimacy of what we do. People are like, well, why don't we have more people on the call? Well, don't ask me why. Ask yourself why. All right. I've built the kind of team where I have many people in the leadership role doing their own calls now. That's what I want to see. It's like when we do the breakout, I'm going to talk about that in Baltimore. Cliff's got his own breakout. I encourage that. That's what I want to see. I'd like to see Brenda someday doing her own breakout, Patty doing their own breakout, Robert doing their own breakout. And maybe your breakout starts with 25, then it goes to 50, then it goes to 100. There's things that we want to see, where we can empower. I think the greatest gift you can give is to watch. Well, let me put it this way. You know, your kids weren't meant to be staying with you at 35 years of age. Y'all get what I'm saying? Okay. It's like we raised our kids to be independent. We raised our kids to be a value to society. We raised our kids to be critical thinkers. And guess what? You know, two of them have become millionaires at a younger age than Darcy and I were ever millionaires. You know, and that's because, and it's not in legal shield. Okay. You know, one's flying F-35, $100 million fighter jets for the U.S. Air Force. You know, it's like, it's fun watching them. It's fun seeing them do the things they're doing, and to be able to be the cheerleader. You know, and I know many of you have that same stories. To be able to shout from that mountain and watch them climb the mountain and be there, I don't think is any greater gift. So, I'm going to open it up here in one more second. You know, one of the things that I'm quite proud of is that I think for myself. I'm a critical thinker. And the other part to that is I don't care what people think about me. Too many people are so concerned about what people think about them. All right. I'm a critical thinker. I think for myself, and I don't care what people think about me. I know who I am. I know where my values lie. I know that I fact check and I think before I speak. You know, it really doesn't matter what someone else thinks because I know who I am. That's your self-worth. Do you know who you are in this mission? Do you know who you are with your self-worth? Do you know who you are with your leadership capabilities as you move forward in the dreams, goals, and desires that you have with what you're doing? And I believe each chapter that we go through, each one of you is going yes and yes and yes and yes. And I can't wait till we get through all of it. So, great leaders gain authority by giving it away. Mark Twain once remarked that great things happen when you don't care who gets the credit. Great things happen when you don't care who gets the credit. If I never get another credit from this company and I see each one of you getting credits, that's the biggest credit I could ever get. Seeing you achieve your dreams, your goals, your desires, and your aspirations. Enlarging others helps you to enlarge yourself. And let me leave it with that, since we're about 30 after. And any aha moments or anything in this chapter that really kind of spoke to you guys, your business, your personal life, your family life, your financial life, your charity life, your growth and physical life, spiritual life, anything come to mind on this?
I had something, Mr.
Okay,
Hoffman.
Patty.
On page 150, I condensed my thought on there. I just put believing in others so that they will believe in themselves. And we have talked about letting someone else, borrow your belief, like with Legal Shield when it comes to the mission. But I think going deeper than that, people, when they're on the edge of understanding their own self-worth and their self-esteem may be a little rocky, it really, that old saying, it takes one. There are people that have come from such horrendous backgrounds and situations, and one person believes in them more than they believe in themselves. And then you see successes with that person against all odds. But again, we're not overnight successes, and we don't do it alone. There's no magic. But my heart goes out to people who haven't found at least one person that sees the potential and nurtures that. So,
Well, that's so critical. I mean, we've talked about this. There's life or death in the power of the tongue.
right.
And let that sink in for a second. It's an awfully sad fact that, so many people are spoken down to in different ways. And you guys, I don't know if you remember the story I told at the last conference when I had my keynote speech, and that was, Billy Epperhart, the founder of Church of the Highlands. And when the teacher said to him, "Can anybody solve this math problem?" I'll shorten it. I think it was maybe, 6th, 7th grade, whatever he was in. Can anybody in the room solve this math problem? And he raises his hand and says, "Oh," and so the teacher says, "Billy, come up here." So he goes up and she has the equation on the board and he just puts the answer in. And he walked away and the teacher said, Billy, that's not correct. He says, yes, it is correct. He goes, we can't see your work and how you came up with it. He goes, it doesn't matter. The answer is correct. He kind of smarted off to the teacher, and he probably shouldn't have done that, but here's what the teacher said. And the teacher should be a lot more mature than the 7th grader. Billy, that's why you'll never amount to anything. That's why you'll never amount to anything. And he dropped out of school.
Yeah.
And you guys remember the rest of the story. He's working in a factory and he's fixing and solving every single problem in the factory. And like when he should have been in like 10th or 11th grade, and the general manager for the factory comes to him and says, Billy, we've never seen anybody like you. You can be anything in life that you want to be. And he went on to become the founder of one of the fastest and largest growing churches in the world. And then he went on to found ARC, which is ARC, Association of Related Churches, tens of thousands of church plants throughout the world, impacting lives for the gospel of Jesus Christ. I mean, it's just unbelievable what one word can do to one, and yet what another can do to lift someone up, and so that's the beauty of each one of us. When is the last time you looked at the waiter or waitress and said, you know what, I really appreciate you. You are absolutely fantastic. When is the last person you saw somebody in the service sector at the airport and said, hey, I want to thank you, but you have the greatest smile. You really made my day. These are just little things, but I tell you what, you don't have to say anything. And if you smile at somebody, what do they normally do back? They smile. There aren't many people that made him do that or helped him to do that. Michael, real quick, go ahead. Michael, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Gotcha. So in connection with that thought, the point of undercutting your team players' activities, whether you do it, whether you're doing it one-on-one with them and making them feel that they're not doing enough, or whether you're doing it in your mind. Because if you do it in your mind, that means you're going to shut off what you should be doing to help them grow. Okay, so you don't undercut your team players' activities or the people you're connected with their activities. It doesn't help them grow. It actually shows that you're inconsistent and you have roller coaster actions, and that leads to inconsistency. We're responsible for controlling that. So I just think that's pretty important.
If you want producers, outproduce them. If you want runners, go run. And I think I've told you stories about 2 different associates on my team who, would at the end of every month, through numerous times of me coaching and mentoring, still would find themselves at the end of the month reaching out to people on their team, finding out what they had in the pipeline, how much business they had, were they going to have the business in by the end of the month. And all that said was that you're not that interested in what I'm doing. You're only interested in qualifying yourself. There's nothing good about any of that. Instead, if I follow up with Brenda, we're closing in on the end of the month. I know your goal is Performance Club. Is there anything I can do to help you? Do you need any 3-way calls? Is there anything I can do to help you? Okay. Big point, good stuff. Anybody else before we start to slowly kind of close it out?
I had a thought, the paradigm shift from, letting go of the stranglehold. And I do think you have to delegate appropriately. I come from 38 years of nursing, and, you can't over expect when someone does not have the skill set. But if you are the charge nurse and you don't know how to delegate, you're going to be dumping waste baskets and passing food trays when you should be functioning at a higher leadership potential. So I think letting go of the control is a key issue while you're still empowering others and yourself. because you're giving yourself more free reign to do what you should be doing, which is, you know, functioning at your highest potential for your own skill set.
Yeah.
That's all. So it was a
Well,
paradigm.
always, yeah, yeah, sorry, Patty, good stuff. Understand, you know, my children didn't have the skill set in many things. Guess what? We helped them develop that skill set. Right? We helped them develop that skill set. It's the same thing with that's why the tell me, show me, let me, grow me is so critical. If you'll raise the expectations, lower the, you know, raise the knowledge, lower the fear, raise the confidence, KFC, like we talked about 2 weeks ago, then you'll see people step up and raise, you'll see people reach for the bar, and you'll eventually see people hit the bar. Juwan, real quick. Juwan?
Yeah, as I was listening to this training and reflecting on the lesson in that book, and listening to you, Mr. Hoffman, I thought about, couldn't help but reflect on my time in corporate America, right? Because in corporate America, if you empower people too well, you might empower yourself out of a job. I mean, it's just the reality of the matter. In some environments, it's just dog eat dog, right? And the person that is your supervisor or manager or whatever the case may be, really oftentimes they don't have an incentive monetarily to help you level up because you may end up being their replacement. And as I was listening to you and reflecting on the lesson in the book, I really began to develop a greater appreciation for this compensation plan here at PPLSI and Legal Shield, because this compensation plan really does incentivize that spirit, right? The more people you help level up, the more people you help become proficient, not just in their business, but just in their lives, period, the more you're rewarded for it. So you can be as altruistic as you desire to be, because this compensation plan rewards that, right? So you don't have to be fearful. You don't have to push people down. You don't have to, you know, poo-poo on other people's success. Matter of fact, you want to edify that success. You want to bring those people to the forefront, and even many a time put those individuals ahead of you, because you can only win from that. And, you know, when I think about my journey here at PPLSI and Legal Shield, that's been the one thing I've always been so appreciative of. It's the one business endeavor that I've been in 20 years where you truly are rewarded for helping other people win. And so, you know, as I was listening to you, I just became so much more grateful for this compensation plan, because that does not always happen outside of Shield Nation, and that does not always happen outside of PPLSI and Legal Shield. So those are my 2 cents. Thank you.
Yep. Yep. Spot on. And is Juwan kind of, you know, good. That was worth 5 cents, Juwan. That was good. Hey, you're breaking up. You were freezing there for a minute. Okay, I got you back. So put this in your notes, and we'll kind of wrap up with this. Juwan referenced it, and I'm going to take it into a quote. Position of scarcity or position of abundance. You can either come from a position of scarcity, which a lot of people in corporate America do. It's fear-based. I can't give everything to my subordinates because they might take my job. That's scarcity. Or you can come from a position of abundance where you can give everything, watch them grow, watch them succeed, and you'll probably be rewarded for what you did. And if someone misses it and doesn't elevate you, you should be rewarded anyway, because you can look at the mirror and say, hey, I did a great job here. You know, and you're probably meant to go start your own company anyway. So anyhow, geez, we could spend 2 weeks on each one of these chapters. You know what I mean? I'm going to leave you with this. There's Miss Teresa. Teresa, thank you for last week. You did a great job. And
My pleasure.
we almost went through the whole call with everybody kind of responding to the question you left them with. So it was a good question. It's a very good question. So appreciate you. Thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
How did you help individuals grow as a leader? So next week, consider this question. how have you helped individuals grow as leaders? Look, guys, this doesn't have to be just in Legal Shield. Okay. How have you helped others? You know, some of you might be part of the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. Some of you might be in the YMCA. Some of you might be scout leaders. I mean, that's how have you helped individual grow as leaders? How did you encourage those people? So 2 questions. Okay. How did you help the individual grow as a leader? And how did you encourage the person? Okay. They kind of go hand in hand, but encouraging and helping people grow are really 2 different things. All right. So consider that as we open up the call next week, if you would. And then I'll leave you with this. I had a good talk with my friend Russell Peden, another premier builder. Actually, Russell has been building in Legal Shield for, I think he started when he was like 24, but he was in the business about 4 or 5 years prior to when Darcy and I got in. So Carol and Russell were a couple of the youngest people in Legal Shield. And I did a big event with Will Dazzy, who's part of Russell's team out in Maryland. Teresa was my hostess. With the mostest. She was great. We had a good time. So what we're going to do is we're going to align Prosperity Partners with Shield Nation for our breakout in Baltimore on the 27th. We will have everything posted on the Shield Nation site. So don't forget, in my eyes, one of the most important days is that breakout session, because it's there that we get to have the recognition. It's there that we get to grow the network. And, you know, you guys find different types of workout partners because you're expanding your associations with people who are like-minded. It's there that we're able to cover any announcements and enhancements that people might want to dive deeper on as we build out a 90-day plan and come out of that conference, specifically targeting the desires, the goals, and the dreams that each one of you have. So that breakout will be, as we do every breakout, and we have for the last 25 years, it'll be on Sunday. We will have a celebration service in the morning. All of the details will be forthcoming on Shield Nation, including the breakout room and how you can register. So look for that in the next couple of days. I'll see Trish tomorrow. I'll see how fast she can get it built. And but remember, what I'm sharing with you is for you to share with others, to share with your team. All right. My understanding right now is it's very difficult for me to communicate through Legal Shield's distribution methods. All right. A lot of the emails or a lot of the correspondence we're sending out isn't reaching many of the emails that people have given as new associates. So they're struggling with the technology. They're trying to change some things out. They're working on it. But it's really incumbent upon each one of you to make sure that you pass that information along so that people know we're part of the breakout. So again, it's going to be exciting. We're going to elevate the recognition. We're going to elevate the energy and opportunity to work together and get a chance to not just hear from great people in this organization, but from some of Russell and his team leaders as well. Okay, so be looking for that on Shield Nation. And you guys, it's important that you help us by getting registered so we have an idea how much we got to build the room out, what kind of AV and stage and things we need for that type of stuff. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Jane's hand was up.
I was
Jane.
Whose hand?
He answered it
Jane.
right after that
Oh, okay.
by saying watch Shield Nation. I was going to ask if we can register yet for the breakout, but I'll keep watching for it.
Yep, you'll be able to, and it should be up. I finally have got correspondence with corporate. They finally got us our room and everything. So that's the only thing we've been waiting on. So sorry, Jane, I couldn't see you because my screen is basically froze with about
No
6
problem.
people up on top. All right. All right, everybody. Great call. Appreciate you.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you for
John.
everything.
Great call. Thank you.
Great
Have a
comments from
Dandy week.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
God
you.
bless.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. You should let me in, leave. Okay.